the Game Boy Advance and the DS, two legendary handhelds from the 2000s. Every kid I knew at least had one of these two handhelds, especially the DS. There were two things I always loved about them: the exclusives and the very interesting and sometimes weird ports they would have. See, back then, console games usually got handheld equivalents. Some were decent, but other times they were not only inferior to the console versions, but they were just kind of a mess. When the Nicktoons series was going around in the 2000s, we got a grand total of 7 versions of the 4 main console versions. 3 on the GBA and 4 on the DS. So today, we're going to be looking at all of them. Yes, all of them. We'll go from each game of the series, starting with Unite on the handhelds, and then work our way up to DS Clubs of Doom. Also, on another note, while the GBA games I recorded on official hardware, I did use an emulator for the DS games, so if you see any slowdown or anything like that, that's most likely not the game, it's just the emulator. I usually try to stick to official hardware, but I have no way in recording DS games, so that's why I'm going to be using an emulator. Also, I won't really be going to the story that much in these games, mostly because the stories are pretty much the same as the console equivalents, and I already went over them in my previous reviews. I'll only bring up the stories if there's any real major differences. So yeah, sit back and relax and enjoy this, because this is going to be a long one. Please? So our first version we're going to be looking at is the GBA version of Unite. This version was developed by Climax Studios. You may know them best for making a lot of handheld versions of licensed games, and they would go on to make a few Silent Hill games. They would also do the DS version of Unite, but we'll get to that one later. So far it doesn't look that bad. I mean, the crop PNGs of the characters look pretty bad, but otherwise, it's Nicktoons Unite. So we start the game at...
Oh my goodness!
What are these sprites? Look, I get this is the GBA, and the pre-rendered 3D character sprites is pretty common in a lot of games. But here, nah man, this just looks downright terrible. Man, no wonder the developers went on to do some Silent Hill games. These sprites are creepy. Like, literally, Timmy's sprite looks like it's about to eat my soul. So this game is a weird exploration platformer, where you basically have to collect a certain number of items to finish the level. You control 2 characters at once, and every time you need to change out characters, you think, oh, maybe I could just switch to the other 2 characters on the fly, right?
Wrong!
Nope! If you need to switch out with the other 2 characters, you have to go to one of these very specific pods and switch out a character. And you have to remember where each of them are, because they're pretty spread out. Because of the exploration and the switching character system, you're gonna have to go back and forth so much often in these levels. If you're wondering, no, there's no map feature at all. You have to do these without one, and some of these levels took me so long to actually finish. The level design is just awful. There have been so many times where I couldn't even see a pathway, and I'd spend so long just trying to find where that last item is to finish the level. Like the Fenton House level, legit took me an hour to actually finish, due to how confusing the level design was and the back and forth nature of the character pods. I'm not kidding. I also don't really like using the characters that much. Like, Timmy's attack gets me hit no matter what, and Jimmy's shrink ray doesn't even kill enemies, it only stuns them for a little bit. So I usually only use Danny and Spongebob. But even then, I can't really use them that much because I need to use the other characters for specific stuff. It's just so annoying. The bosses are also pretty trash. Vlad and Plankton are just so mindless, Crocker is super annoying, and the final boss, while it's a cool idea of them combining them all, it's still not very fun. Also, passwords? Why? This is 2005. You're telling me you can't put a save feature in this game, where most Game Boy Advance games you could just save to the cartridge? Why? This isn't 1991. This is 2005. What gives? The only thing that I can say that I liked about this game was some of the music. The music is pretty decent. In fact, there's actually a few of them that I actually really like. But yeah, other than that, this game is garbage. Probably the worst Nicktoons game out of the entire series. It's ugly, the gameplay is tedious, the level design is awful, the bosses are garbage, and it's just a really awful game. Definitely skip on this one. But maybe the DS version is better? Like I said before, this version was also developed by Climax, but this version came out a lot later than the other versions. The other versions came out in 2005. This one came out in 2006. This is also notably the only Nicktoons game on a handheld that's actually in 3D. Some stuff from the GBA version is carried over from here, like the music and the 3D models. However, unlike the GBA version where they looked absolutely hideous, the models here actually fit a lot better with the environments and don't look too bad. In fact, the game in general looks pretty nice for a DS game. I could definitely see this being a PS1 game. It's pretty cool. So this is a 3D platformer we have. Originally, I was a little turned off by that, since the DS's D-pad wasn't really that great for 3D games. But here, it actually plays pretty decently. You platform through each stage and just try to make it through the end of each of them. Pretty simple. However, I actually enjoy using the characters this time. Danny shoots beams, can phase through walls, and could wall jump. Spongebob shoots bubbles, he could also float in the air for a little bit, and he could even glide down. Jimmy's shrink ray actually kills enemies, and he could even fly for a little bit. Unfortunately, Timmy isn't really that great. He can't attack anything, and you really only use him for stealth sections. Which, man, these are kinda terrible. I don't feel sneaky at all, and the enemies, I swear, it's so stingy on when it's a good time to move or not. I've counted so many times where it looks like I can go, but the guards are just that fast to see you. It's so annoying. I'm also not really a big fan of the touchscreen minigames. Most of them are just kind of boring, and they go on for a little too long. But honestly, they aren't that bad, just there. The platforming feels nice, and it's great that unlike other games, you can actually switch between characters on the fly whenever you want. That's great. Bosses are kind of weird though. Like, you fight Vlad and Plankton, nothing really crazy with that. But then Crocker, you have to use thunderstorms to attack him, and for some reason he's invincible to attacks, even Danny's ghost beams for some reason. Then the final boss, you don't even fight the entire syndicate, you just fight Calamitous, and even then, it's not really a fight, it's more of a platforming stage. So overall, it's decent. Probably my favorite version of Unite, if I have to be honest. It's still not a great game, but if you want to play a decent platformer on the DS, then give this game a shot. It's alright. Now we come to the Volcano Island handheld versions. Volcano Island is still my favorite console Nicktoons game, so maybe the handheld versions will also be pretty fun. So let's start with the GBA version, which is actually the one I played way before the console version. This version was developed by Half Brick Studios. Back then, they were mostly known for GBA ports, but then they would actually go on to do Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride? Wow, that's a pretty big resume right there. First off, a save feature. Thank you. It's already better than the last game. So wow, this game looks much, much better. The sprites are great, the environments are really nice, and wow, this soundtrack is a great listen. So this game isn't a beat 'em up at all, it's more of a platformer. But even then, I'd call it more of a traditional platformer. You only have 4 characters, that being SpongeBob, Danny, Timmy, and Patrick. Sam, Tucker, and Sandy aren't in this version, and Jimmy is still here, but just as a hologram. But I really like the characters' abilities here. Like, Danny's phasing ability is so cool to use. I love the idea they have for it, where you have to switch back and forth between the platforms so they appear. It's really cool. I also really like SpongeBob's digging ability. It actually tends me up digging through these sometimes. The abilities are great, and the level design is built really well with these in mind. If I were to describe the abilities, they'd be easy to learn but difficult to master. And later on, they do put you to the test with these abilities. Your hearts also act as kind of a collectible in some way, where if you finish with an amount of hearts, and with gold hearts you collect, you'll get some more levels. That also goes with the salvage items too, though these you get by the end of the level instead of throughout. So the more you play well, the more levels you'll be able to play, which I really like. These special levels are really cool and are well worth doing it. Obviously there's no real bosses, except for the Magu, but that's not really a boss, it's really just a level. I'm gonna be real here. I think this might be the best Nicktoons game we have here.
What?
Yeah, I'm serious. Great level design, awesome abilities, nice sprites, I love the challenge, and it's just a great game honestly. The only thing that I'm not really a fan of is the hub world is kinda confusing, and the game once again is really short, but that's pretty much it. It's not just a good Nicktoons game, it's just a really good game in general. I'd highly recommend playing this. It's a really, really good time, and well worth it. So now for the DS version. This is one of 2 games in this video that I've actually never played before, so this is gonna be interesting. After Unite on the DS, the rest of the DS versions would be handled by a different developer, Natsumi. You may know them best by publishing the Harvest Moon games, and they also did a bunch of licensed games on handhelds. I think they also assisted in the development of Kirby Squeak Squad, but I'm not sure if that's real or not. So this is a platformer slash exploration game like Unite was on the GBA, where you have to find a certain number of items to complete a level. However, unlike that game, it's actually pretty decent. There are only 3 playable characters unfortunately. Spongebob, Timmy, and Danny. Patrick, Tucker, and heck, Jimmy actually appears on the island this time, but again, none of them are playable. I love how each character moves. They feel really nice to use. And one other thing I like about this game is that there's an actual map to find where the items you'll need. That's great, and that makes things so much less tedious. The game looks great for a DS game. It's almost like it could be like a Super Nintendo game. That's how good it looks. The music is also pretty good. Not super memorable, but we got some good tracks in here. The bosses are also pretty fun. I like how each one looks so unique from each other, and I like the way you beat some of them. I do have some problems though. For one, I think the levels are honestly just kind of okay. Not bad, but there isn't really anything special about them. Like, some of the levels look so similar that I couldn't really tell them apart. While I think that finding the items are not nearly as bad as the GBA Unite, it's still kinda tedious to just stop in place, tap the screen, and then get the crystal. I also think the enemy placement is pretty bad. Sometimes it's near impossible to hit some of them without getting hit yourself. It's really annoying. The minigames are decent, I guess, but they're pretty basic. All you really do is just try to catch the fruit and dodge the enemies. But the music is great in them. Overall, this is probably my least favorite version of Volcano Island, but it's still a good game though. Not really much else to say about it, so let's move on to the next game. So now we're at the handheld versions of Toybots. I enjoyed the console game, and it's probably my second favorite console Nicktoons game. But how do the handheld versions stack up? Well, let's start with the GBA version. This version was developed by Firemint Studios, who mainly just does mobile games. Honestly, I literally couldn't even find much else about them. What's also strange is that this game came out in 2007. That's near the tail end of the Game Boy Advance's lifespan. So this is one of the last GBA games released for the system, which is crazy. So first off, what happened to the save system? It went back to using passwords. What gives? You're telling me they had the money they have to put Volcano Island to have a save system, but this game they just couldn't? Why? It makes no sense. This is 2007. This is just laughable that they would remove the save system. So first off, I do like how the game looks. It looks pretty good for a late GBA game. The music. Oof, what happened here? Volcano Island's music was great stuff, but here, most of the songs are either forgettable, or they honestly make my ears numb after listening to them. Like honestly, listening to Retroville's theme made my ears so numb after listening to it for a long time. The only song I like is Fairy World's theme. It is a great listen, but yeah, the soundtrack took a hit in quality. The game once again is a platformer, however there are 5 stories you can do, kind of. Near the beginning of the game, you have a choice between 5 characters you could free, which are the 5 main characters from the console version. However, it's the exact same no matter who you choose. No matter if you pick Spongebob or Jimmy first, it's the same every time. Same levels, same story. The only thing that changes is the pathway you take in each stage. But that's kinda it. Controls feel kinda slippery. I feel like the characters go way too fast, and it just ends up killing me a lot. I also don't really care for the level design that much. It just looks super bland, even with the pathways. The enemy placement is really bad too. Like, it's the exact same problem I had with Volcano Island on the DS. And the bosses are kind of awful. I mean, I'm glad there's actual bosses here, unlike the console version, but these bosses are just a war of attrition. Hit them before they hit you, and that's pretty much it. And the worst part about all of this is the repetition. Okay, so every time you beat a level, you rescue one of the characters. But in the next stage, you have to finish the stage with the character you pick and the character you rescued separately. So that means that you're gonna have to be playing these stages multiple times, and it gets so boring. Literally, there are stages later on where you're gonna be having to play them 5 times, and it's awful. Why do I have to beat the stage multiple times? This is padding. The absolute definition of padding. And honestly, I don't really like using the characters that much. Like, most of them just don't feel that great to use, and some of them are downgraded compared to Volcano Island. Like Danny's phasing ability, it was awesome in Volcano Island, but here it's executed so awkwardly. I'm gonna be real here with you all. I couldn't finish this game. By the time I got to Retroville, I was so bored out of my mind, and the sheer thought of beating the stage 5 times, just no, I couldn't do it. And from what I understand, I don't think you get anything from beating the game with all 5 characters. I think you get an elite mode or something like that, but I really couldn't care. Yeah, so as you can see, this is gonna rank pretty low on my list. I mean, the game does have some good stuff going for it. Like I said, the graphics and environments look nice. While there aren't any master models of any sort, you can find some character cameos in these stages, and some of these were pretty cool, since some of them I didn't really expect to see on the Game Boy Advance. But yeah, other than that, it's just not a very good game. I wouldn't recommend playing it. So maybe the DS version will fare better? I used to play this version a lot when I was little. And I mean a lot. This game is actually just a straight up beat 'em up, and I mean a very, very traditional beat 'em up. Like, if you played a 2D beat 'em up before, you'll get used to this. Unlike the console version, the only 2 unlockable new characters that are in both versions are Jenny and Gur. DS version actually has 3 exclusive characters: Mr. Blick, Zim, and El Tigre. All 3 of them are really cool additions to the game. Like, who wouldn't want to play as Zim or El Tigre? There are also 2 secret characters you can unlock by using cheat codes: Spongegar and Dark Danny. And these aren't some costume swaps, no, they're their own characters. And man, they are OP, especially Dark Danny. The beat 'em up gameplay is pretty decent overall. Sure, it's not as robust as other 2D beat 'em ups, but it could be pretty fun. There are also 2 other gameplay styles. There are these mech ride stages, which are pretty fun. In these stages, you could also get these portrait collectibles of Nicktoons characters, which is pretty cool. If you collect all of them, you can unlock Gur, and it's great you could team him up with Zim in this game, even if Gur is literally just a reskin of Mr. Blick. And oh my god, actual bosses! And they're actually really good bosses, in fact. I play in the first person view, but these fights are really fun. All of them change it up quite a bit, and the music, oh man, it's amazing. Presentation is also pretty nice. Sprites look nice, the music is great, and the dialogue exchange is really good stuff. So yeah, this game is really fun. Much, much better than the GBA version. I'd recommend it. So now it's time for the DS version of Globs of Doom. As you know, I wasn't really a big fan of the console version, so maybe the DS version is a lot better? This is the other handheld game I haven't played before, so I'm really curious about how this version fares up too. The story is actually really different compared to the console version too. It's still about the heroes and villains teaming up to defend against the Morphoids. However, they don't build a robot this time, and it's revealed that the Morphoids were actually using the almighty Tallest to take over the world. In fact, the bosses are all different from the console version. You still fight Globius Maximus and kinda Jimmy's plant, but instead you go fight the almighty Tallest in the Urkin ship. Yeah, you don't actually go to Zimstown in this version. You go to the Urkin ship instead. Morphoid walls in Bikini Bottom. Though that's kind of lame, honestly. The Juju vendor in Tax World. Yeah, there's actually a boss fight in Tax World. And Vlad Plasmius in Amity Park. You know, on a side note, I kind of like to think that after Danny Phantom's finale, Phantom Planet, while Vlad was drifting in space, the Morphoids encountered him and possessed him, and that's why he's here. I don't know, it's just a little theory I have. The game looks nice, the music is still great, and the dialogue is still pretty fun. The gameplay itself, though, The best way I could describe Globs of Doom on the DS is a puzzle platformer. Unfortunately, the characters are predetermined. However, again, at least they all get the same amount of time to shine. And heck, you could even choose whoever you want for the final boss. You switch between two characters, and you need to try and get both characters to the end of the stage, while also trying to solve puzzles and beat up some enemies. The thing that bothers me most about the game is that you can't control both characters at once. It's really tedious constantly switching between two characters, especially having to put two characters on the same platform. It's really annoying. Here, let me give you an example of a similar game that doesn't have this problem. Shrek 2 on the Game Boy Advance. Okay, I know this is a really weird example, but please hear me out. In Shrek 2, it's also a game where you have to switch between multiple characters. However, here, you could control all the characters at once with a single button. That's not the case in Globs of Doom, unfortunately. And that's my real big problem with the game. Oh, I mean, everything else about the gameplay is fine. I like the abilities each character has, the level design is decent, and I do like how each character feels. So overall, it's okay. Not bad, and it's better than the console version, but it's nothing more than just alright. So that's all the handheld games. So I thought after I talked about all the games, let's rank them all and I'll give you my final thoughts of the entire series. So firstly, let me give you a little rundown of what each tier is, at least in my opinion. F tier is the worst. Absolutely garbage games. D tier are games that I really don't like, but I don't think they're outright terrible. C tier are games that I just think are okay/mediocre. B tier are games that I consider good, or pretty good. A tier are really, really good games and are well worth your time. And obviously, S tier is the best one of them all. So now let's begin from the bottom to the top. So at the very bottom at F tier is the GBA version of Unite. Squidward! It's ugly, the gameplay is awful, the level design is confusing, it's just garbage all around. Definitely the worst game out of all of them. So for my D tiers, above Unite on the GBA is the GBA version of Toybots. One of the most boring games I've ever played. It's so uninteresting, the soundtrack is ear-grating, the controls are slippery, and I couldn't even finish it. So why is it above Unite GBA if I couldn't even finish it? Well, at least I can see there's a lot more effort put into this than Unite. It does look nice, and plus I don't even think people even bought this version, considering it came out at the tail end of the GBA's lifespan. So this game was probably just shoehorned in. Above GBA Toybots and the King of D is the console version of Globs of Doom. This game is also one of the most boring games I've ever played, but I love the ideas it has, and at least I finished it, unlike Toybots GBA. Now to the C tier. At the bottom of C tier is the original Unite. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, but I can only recommend it if you're playing with multiple friends. Just playing by yourself is just a big drag. Not an awful game, but it's still not very good. Above Unite is DS Globs of Doom. It's okay, but I wasn't really thrilled with it. It's better than the console version, I guess. Above Globs of Doom DS and the King of Sea is Unite on the DS. Very cool game, but there just isn't much to really say about it, or really that sells it. It's definitely my favorite version of Unite, but I'd only really say it's a decent game. Now for the B tier. At the bottom of B is Volcano Island on the DS. I enjoyed my time playing through this one. It wasn't amazing, but I was pleasantly surprised by it. It's pretty good. Above Volcano Island on the DS and King of B is Toybots on the DS. A lot of fond memories with this game. And it's still pretty fun. I wish the beat 'em up gameplay was deeper, but it's still a fun time. Now for the A tier. At the bottom of A is the console version of Toybots. A really fun and challenging game. I do wish the story was better, but the gameplay is still really fun, except for the mech stages. I still am not really a fan of those. And at the top of A tier is the console version of Volcano Island. The best console version by a landslide. I love the story, the gameplay is fun, and it's the most solid console Nicktoons game of all of them. Finally, at the top of S, and the best game in the series in my opinion, is Volcano Island on the Game Boy Advance. Guys, this game is great stuff. It's not just a great Nicktoons game, but it's a great game in general. I already gushed about this game in this review, so yeah, go play it. It's great. And yeah, that's my ranking of all the Nicktoons games. So what are my thoughts on the entire series as a whole? It's a product of a different time, and something that I'm unsure if we'll ever even see again. Sure, most of these games were either just mediocre, and some of them were pretty awful, but we have some genuinely solid games in here, and anyone who loves Nicktoons, especially the ones from the 2000s, should give these games a shot. I know technically there are other Nicktoons games out there, but for the main crossover saga, this is it. I hope one day we'll see another crossover type game like this again. Or heck, maybe even a remaster of them like we did with Rehydrated. I don't know. Maybe it'll happen, but we'll have to see. But yeah, that's the entire series, and the review marathon has come to a close. Oh, hello. So this last section is not going to be scripted at all. This is just going to be me talking to you all, because that was a long video, and as the end of the marathon, my first marathon, so I just wanted to take this time and give you guys a little message before I end the video, since I think this is a good time. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching my reviews, and I always did want to do reviews, but I never really thought I'd go this hard with them, and I'm really having a lot of fun with these, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying me talk about weird PS2 Nickelodeon games from like 20 years ago. Oh geez, they're 20 years old. Wow. Or at least close to. I'm happy you guys are enjoying them. So I just wanted to take this time and thank my subscribers / viewers / followers. You all, thank you for supporting me. My mutuals on Discord and Twitter, my online friends that I talk to, my family, and my close best friends. You guys know who you are. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys have been super, super supportive of me doing this, and I'm happy you guys are enjoying my videos. It means so much to me. You have no idea. But yeah, I just wanted to take this time to thank you all, because I just really think it was a good time to do so. So yeah. Hope you all have an amazing day, and please take care. Bye. Thank you again.